this is Hugo Girl, the podcast where we read and discuss Hugo Award-winning novels. I'm Lori.
I'm Haley.
I'm Amy.
And today we are going to talk about Hyperion by Dan Simmons. But before we get started, I do have an update that I meant to do last time, and I forgot about it. We have a science friend update.
Yay!
On Starship Troopers.
Oh, yeah.
So, when we read Starship Troopers, we engaged in much speculation about how evolution occurs, because according to Heinlein and his characters, you have to be radiated in order to evolve.
Right.
And we were like, do we? Is that right? Maybe it's right. And like, we talked a lot about it and became scientists by the end. And anyway, someone reached out, you could maybe say took pity on us.
Thank you.
Our friend Steve from Androids and Assets.
Aw.
Thanks.
And he introduced us to his very nice wife, Candace, who is an actual scientist. Candace is a biologist.
I don't know if you're implying about our science degrees, but I feel pretty confident about them.
I mean, she's a classically trained scientist. We're self-taught scientists.
True.
So I feel like her faction of scientists, the classically trained scientists, deserves a voice. So Candace said, quote, "Radiation is not needed to evolve." Most mutation occurs during cell division. That's why bacteria and viruses, such as COVID, mutate so fast, because they are constantly dividing and have thousands of generations very quickly. So Heinlein and his Starship Trooper did not know what they were talking about. They're also not scientists.
That's a nice theory, but I want facts.
Yeah, I think that's what this is. I think this is facts. So thank you, Candace, for helping us understand. And everybody out there, if you don't have science friends, get science friends. And then you don't have to speculate like like a trio of doofuses. And then have people help you on the internet. Okay, so that's that update. Anything from you guys? No?
I think so.
Oh, yeah, leave us a review. You guys know I check the Apple Podcast reviews like 17 times a day, and I haven't seen a new one in a really long time.
It makes her month. Her month.
It really does. So leave us a review, but only if you're going to say something nice. Okay, so Hyperion by Dan Simmons, who's kind of a poop head, but also writes pretty good books. This won Best Novel in 1990. And there wasn't a whole lot like that I found that year of interesting factoids, except unrelated to the book, but the 1990 awards. The winner of Best Short Story was Susie McKee Charnas, and her short story was entitled Boobs. I just found that this morning, so I have not made time to sit down and read it yet, but I look forward to sitting down and reading it.
Man, I wish we'd known that on one of our books that had no boob talk, but this one's got plenty.
Yeah.
Well,
So.
yeah, it does it.
It's made up for the past 5 or 6 easily.
Yeah, but if we ever read something again that's short on boobs, we could always do a mini episode on boobs. Okay, so plot summary.
Good luck. There's a lot.
Well, the good thing about a summary is it doesn't have to be a lot. So
I disagree. I think you have to do one paragraph per page to summarize the book.
We know that you disagree. Okay. So Hyperion is a frame story with what is technically the main narrative taking place in the 29th century. There are 3 major factions that we're aware of. There are your sort of basic humans who inhabit lots of planets by now across the galaxy. There are ousters, who are modified humans, which I did not know that. I thought they were just humanoid, and we didn't know much about them. But according to Wikipedia, that I do donate to monthly, so don't yell at me for leaning on Wikipedia, they're modified humans.
So I can interrupt you now, or I can talk about it later. Your choice.
Go for it. I don't care.
So basically, they've been living in space for 3 centuries, so that there's been natural mutations that come from just living in space.
But not from radiation.
No.
Okay, well, that's
So
good to know.
kind of like in The Expanse, like people that were raised in zero gravity are like shaped differently.
Okay, cool. So modified is like a bit too much of a word then. They've just evolved differently. So, okay, ousters are also humans, but they grew up different. And there's also artificial intelligence that has an alliance known as the Technocore. So basic humans and ousters are in an ongoing war. There are skirmishes. There are things going on here and there. And one of the many planets inhabited by humans is Hyperion, which is sort of I feel like it's kind of a backwater, which is interesting because it has given rise to a very popular religion. Hyperion is home to a spooky 9-foot-tall, many-limbed, blade-covered, shiny deity called the Shrike that sometimes hugs people to death. The Shrike inhabits... Oh, no! Not like Lenny. Unless the Shrike is going to reveal some major good traits, I guess, in the next book, I wouldn't say like Lenny. But because his hugs to death are not accidental. So the Shrike inhabits an area on Hyperion called the Time Tombs, where time runs backwards, which is confusing. And so this is all very weird. So naturally, a faction of humanity decides to make a religion out of it. And so the Shrike Church, which is interplanetary, there are Shrike churches and priests all over the place, picks a handful of people every so often to take a pilgrimage to meet the Shrike, which mostly means getting hugged to death by it. In Hyperion...
Or I guess getting put on a tree?
Yeah,
I wasn't sure which one you got.
You're like probably going to die. Okay. So I think that's the gist.
Either way.
You're not coming back probably. So in this novel, 7 pilgrims have been chosen to travel together to Hyperion on the Shrike pilgrimage. The pilgrimage sets the stage for each participant to tell their story of their personal connection to Hyperion. So that's like the present day narrative. And then the flashbacks of each pilgrim's story makes up the large bulk of the novel. So really the present day narrative is kind of just a mechanism to tee up the reason for bringing them together to tell their stories. So really, mostly what we're just getting is their stories being told while they're journeying from space to Hyperion to meet the Shrike. The end.
Nice.
Thank you.
Very succinct.
Space Canterbury Tales.
Yeah, Space Canterbury Tales. And I really like the Canterbury Tales and I took a study of a single author in Chaucer in college, and I also took 3 classes in British romantics. So I have read a shit ton of Keats, wrote and got a very bad grade on a paper about some of Keats's poetry, and I don't remember anything about it.
I've never read Canterbury Tales. I've only ever read The Nun's Tale, I think. No, and The Wife of Bath.
Yeah, I was going to say,
I have read The Wife of Bath.
You got to read, if you do only read one, it's got to be that one.
I think I read The Wife of Bath. And then, I know I've read Keats stuff, but I don't think I've ever read
Keats' most famous is Ode to a Nightingale, which is beautiful. He was big on odes. One of my favorite things about Keats is, so he died young, but before he died, he read all of Shakespeare, and that has helped to make him a better writer, I think, or it helped make him a better writer, and that's why I read all the Shakespeare ones.
Because of Keats?
Yeah, to be a better writer.
I liked his, I like the poem to his daughter that they have in here. Like, I used to have that, the first time I read this, that poem really affected me. I had to take it to my mirror.
Goodies from Goodreads, anybody?
I got some.
Go, Haley.
All right, I have 2. The first one is, so apparently at the top of Goodreads, for book entries, there's people that can ask questions, and somebody asked this question. Hello, I am looking for a book, maybe series, that talks at some point about a woman with scythes for hands. This front cover looks familiar, but can anyone tell me if this is that book or something similar to search for? Thanks. So that was just fun. I thought that was cute. And then, so I had to, 94% of people like this book, which is a pretty good sign for the most part. Mm-hmm. So I sorted by 1 stars, and there was lots of angry people. That's your prerogative. But somebody named Jindu said, it would be unfair to judge this book as science fiction. It is space fantasy. It is also smutty, violent, and absent a satisfactory conclusion. The constant literary references were really distracting to immersion in the story, and probably mean only to give erections to big John Keats fans. If captured by the Shrike, my torture would be to read this book for eternity. Ouch.
I don't this book wasn't for him. No. It is a little smutty, though. He's not wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I don't necessarily disagree with what he's saying, but I did still like it. So I had that one, and I have 2 other excerpts from longer ones. So the first one is from SKB. Maybe if I had more tolerance for sci-fi or gratuitous vagina dentata, I would enjoy this book. All I can say is, to paraphrase Futurama, I read it, I can never unread it. And then Bill says, 6 highly suggestive stories that end up in one odious, steaming pile of dangling plot points. There is nothing more debased than literary reference. Debased! It's so funny. So people are so mad about all the literary references, and I did think reminds me in some ways of like a highbrow Ready Player One.
Yeah.
And all the music and pop culture references in Ready Player One. But I will say at least Dan Simmons does not devolve into lists of things.
Yeah.
He's not like the works of John Keats, which include, and lists a bunch of poems. But yeah, people are so bothered by that. Which
I wonder if they just
surprised by it.
Do you think they just don't like literature, or they feel bad they don't know it?
I mean, I think the sense that I got was maybe that they think it's like lazy to lean on existing work. But I mean, I don't.
Well, then they definitely won't like Ilium, which is another Dan Simmons book, which basically recreates the Trojan War with like aliens and robots or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so
sounds interesting.
Yeah,
I think it's cool to use parts of.
I don't mind it. I don't mind it.
The man likes a trope.
Yeah.
Any other goodies?
Most of the reviews were like, "Wow, this book is really complex and
I
interesting."
tried to find one, and they were all like, "I don't like the writing." It's like, well, okay, well.
But like, I mean, that's why again, like when it comes down to leaving reviews, like either you liked it or you didn't. It's hard to say that it was good or bad. So.
Yeah. So the first thing that struck me about this is that it made me think of an Agatha Christie mystery.
Oh, really?
Yeah, how everybody... So it reminded me of the beginning of And Then There Were None. Have y'all read that? So all these people get an invitation to a fancy party on an island, and then they all start getting picked off one by one. But when they get there, they're all like, so why are we here? What's your story? What are you doing here? And it felt very much like a cozy mystery.
Mm-hmm. Or like a Gideon the Ninth.
Yeah.
Is it like Gideon the Ninth? Is that what they do in that one too?
Yeah, it's basically a space opera where all these necromancers get called to a planet, and then they have to figure out why they're there.
Yeah, they're competing for like a fancy job, but they don't know what the job is or what the rules are.
There's also a Doctor Who episode that reminds me of
Yeah,
that.
I mean, this is like a common thing. So
Yeah.
to call it derivative, it would be to call most of art derivative. I
Well,
think.
yeah, what isn't? Yeah, it was funny, the people who are so mad about the literary references, and it's like, well, everything, I mean, it's all connected, man. Literature is a flat circle.
Truly.
Do you guys want to talk about the individual people? So the way the book moves is like we start out, we meet the consul first, and he was the governor of Hyperion for a while, which seems weird because my impression of Hyperion is it has like one city on it, and the rest is just like grass that's quite sharp.
Yeah, his story is the most confusing, I think.
Yeah, so we start out with him, and a government bigwig is like, you have to go on the Shrike pilgrimage, and he's like,
Fine.
yeah, he was like, do I go or do I just not go? But he goes, and then each of the stories, it's not told in like a dialogue. The kind of conceit is that the consul has like taken notes and recreated them all in narrative form so we can read each story like its own little book instead of like, I guess, listening to the speaker tell it.
Yeah.
And the first one who tells this story. Well, the first part that I thought was funny is that they argue about whether or not they want to tell their stories, and then they like draw numbers. They vote on whether they're going to tell their stories, and then they like hold to it, even though it's a very close vote. And they're like, "Oh, I've been forced. Now I have to tell my story," which is funny because it's like you don't. But so the first one that we hear is the priest's story, and he starts off by telling the story of another priest.
Preception.
Yo, dog, I heard you like stories.
Preception.
And
yeah.
there's some like stuff about maybe there's some Christian origins on the planet. So he's telling the story of a priest who was exiled from being a priest, and he had to escort him to Hyperion, which I'm not super sure why. Seems like they could have put him on an ankle monitor and just made sure that he made it to Hyperion. But he had to be escorted at a time debt of 8 years to himself to take this priest to Hyperion, where that priest, Father Dure, decides that he wants to study these people.
Bless.
This group of people called the Bakura on Hyperion, who are thought to maybe be descendants of the 70 original settlers, I guess you call them. Or maybe
They are
the actual
They are the
70,
settlers.
so like 400 years old. And anyway, he finds like crosses, creepy, fleshy crosses growing in a cave and sees the Shrike, and the Shrike doesn't hug him. Is that good? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't understand the Shrike. I don't know what he wants. I don't know what he does.
No,
Is
I don't
he
know.
real?
I don't know.
Yeah.
So Well, if we want to go there, so it seems like they're trying to imply or tell us that the Shrike was created by the Ousters sometime way in the future.
Oh, really?
Around the same time as the Time Tombs, right? And they were all sent back in time to destroy humanity because of some cataclysm that's going to come. That's what I gather. And so the console, to jump ahead, is the one that sets off this thing that the Ousters have created to trigger the thing they sent back in time.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So the Shrike escaped at some point. It's been wandering around, but it stays near the Time Tombs for the most part. Then after the console does what he does, it suddenly can go anywhere. And it's able to jump through space and time and wreak havoc, basically. And the way that I read these stories is that it's giving us everything about humanity you would have to destroy in order to destroy humanity. So the first one is religion. The second one is war and passion. The third one is I don't remember what order they come in, but it's like family, and then there's retribution in the console story. There's like all these things that like make like the one with Ron Lemia is the guy who's like that plays on the concept of self, like what makes a person. If you take a person's entire consciousness and put it in another vessel, is the same person. So anyway, the Duray story to me was just exploring that concept of faith, of religion. Right?
Jesus, Amy.
I told you it makes me think too much. That's why I'm no good at this.
Think the correct amount. I was just like, well, all right. There's like a weird cross tumor.
This may not be right. It's just how I read it.
Oh,
so,
I mean, I don't think there's a right or a wrong.
So
but
the Duray thing.
I'm here for this.
So Duray was. So he goes and he's like excommunicated, sort of.
Yeah.
Because he told some lie about some artifacts or something. So the church sends him away to Hyperion, whatever. He's exiled. So, but he finds this, what he thinks is proof that his faith is right? He sees a cross on this world that's never had Christianity or was pre-Christian or something like that. And he's like, this is proof that my religion is right. And instead of that happening, he learns that this cross is a resurrection symbol, but in this really grotesque, terrible way, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like this weird challenge of his faith. Like if you get proof of your faith, is it faith anymore? And then after you get proof that it's not your faith, what do you do? And so that to me is Duray's story. It's like that. And so the Shrike comes into all these stories in various ways. And that's the through line to me. It's like he's like seeing what humanity is and what you have to do to destroy it.
Yeah,
because I
accept all of this.
Because that's the goal. The goal is to destroy humanity. That's the goal of the Ousters. Destroy the humanity that isn't the Ousters.
Huh. I love this. I just was like, well, all right, y'all go on.
But Duray's story is crazy because he goes down and he finds these like mole people who are 400 years old.
Yeah, that's what Amy was raised by a pastor. I was raised...
Maybe that's why I read that way.
I was raised completely a-religious, so to me, I just didn't think anything about Christianity. I just knew that this was like an evil white man and that these people were going to fuck him up. And I was right.
And they do fuck him up.
Yeah.
They fuck him up good.
Yeah, I couldn't decide if it was proof of Christianity or if it really undercut everything we know about Christianity.
It doesn't. Well, I don't know if it does either one. Because it's like, so this thing is cruciform and it's a cross in form, right? And it has the ability to resurrect things. And so that obviously connects with Jesus and the cross and resurrection. That's a whole thing.
Well,
right?
That's what I love about books about Christianity in the future where there's like multiple planets. Because like, does Jesus go to every planet and save people?
Right. So that's what he was trying to figure out. He's like, so he sees this cross and he's like, and it's in this like basilica. Who the fuck knows where that came from? And he's like, oh, this is proof. Like, here's the cross that predates anything Christianity is on earth. It's proof that Christianity is right. I'm going to save the church. Everything's going to be great. Right. And then he realizes it's a complete perversion of everything that he thought it was. Right. So it's this coral, rock, that once it adheres to you, it just keeps you alive forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it is.
And you devolve too, because the people that he meets at Bakura are like identityless and they just sort of exist. Like they're basically just survive.
Because if there's no pressure, if there's no death pressure, then what do you do?
Yeah. And so you
don't procreate. You don't survive by eating.
He also can barely tell them apart. He like talks about how smooth and
like
round they are, and I imagine them all as Bunsen Honeydew.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what I pictured too.
What's funny about the idea of him getting fulfilled by the idea of seeing a cross on another planet is that the fact that the cross is the symbol of Christianity is complete luck. Like, because the Romans happened to crucify him, they could have thrown rocks at him. That could have been the method of execution.
Yeah, it doesn't hold up.
And Christians could wear rocks. Like, that's the same thing. Like, it's just a...
Yeah, it doesn't hold up. I think this man was, like, he's a little bit desperate. He's a little bit crazy. He's a little bit... I don't know. He's a believer.
Part of belief is like you're looking for something, so you're going to find it. You know, people, and I mean, I'm not knocking that or saying it's good or bad, but like a lot of times you are looking for something, and so you find it, or you see it in something that's available because you were looking for it and you wanted to see it. So maybe it's a little bit about that, and then you do that and you're like, I found it. And then it fucks you up really bad. And then you like live on a flaming electricity tree.
Had to strap himself to that lightning tree.
For 7 years. Very Sisyphean.
I didn't understand how so Hoyt is the guy telling the story.
Yeah.
How did he end up with 2 cruciforms on himself? We didn't find out about that,
Hoyt
did
has
we?
2?
Yeah. So, or else maybe it's just one on his back. I don't know. He has one.
This
at
book,
least.
I didn't sweat small stuff.
Oh, I didn't know if he had 2, but he ended up...
Maybe it's only one.
The Bakura did it to him because they killed his friends and didn't kill him. They were like,
he's
you are of the cruciform. So they like did whatever they did. Yeah. Oh yeah, they're like
the Muppet
in Toy Story.
Yeah.
The claw.
Cruise.
It's so spooky.
Yeah, no. When I first read this, maybe in 2011 or 2012, this first story blew my mind. And I was like, holy shit.
The first story is really good.
Yeah.
It is, and he's like suffering the whole time too, because you're not supposed to be able to get within like 10 kilometers or something of the
poor Hoyt.
Bakura encampment. And I don't think we really know how Hoyt got out, do we? I don't know.
Yeah, Hoyt's story is real flimsy. If after you get out of the DeRay story and you think about what Hoyt had to do to find him and what happened, like how did Hoyt get there, get out, get a cruciform? Like,
yeah,
you don't get any of
especially
that.
because DeRay tried so hard to leave and couldn't.
Right.
And Hoyt got out, but he's constantly in horrible pain because he's got the cruciform on him and he's not near the cavern of weird cruciform corals. The cleft.
Oh, I left that. So the first part of this story reminds me of, have y'all read the book of Strange New Things?
No.
No. It is a book by Michael Faber, and it's, a man goes to a different planet.
Oh, I like
There's
him.
a different society, and they're weird, like these little weird guys, and it gave me the same vibes. So.
The cruciform.
Little weird guys.
They're so weird. But anyway, so he's like suffering constantly, so that seems sad. So that's that guy.
That's that guy.
So the next guy is Fedman Kassad. I think he's a colonel.
Colonel Kassad.
He sounds
Colonel
hot.
Kassad. He does.
He does. He sounds hot.
And this is where we really begin with my comparison with the Terror.
Yes,
because
the crossover you've been waiting for, everyone.
Yeah, so I think maybe having read exactly 2 Dan Simmons novels, I'm convinced that he has a template for a successful novel, and it works for me.
Yeah.
So you all know that this is a Hugo award-winning novel / The Terror podcast.
And sometimes Moby Dick.
Yeah.
And sometimes Moby Dick. And so we see Kassad primarily in this big space battle against the Ousters where he's like badly injured and he's in like a recovery tube and he like gets woken up after being in the recovery sauce. So he's like
the Bacta.
kind of just been like reborn after being put back together.
Sauce.
And his ship gets torpedoed by some Ousters and he's got to not die. And it's very improbable because he's been awake for like an hour after like regrowing a spleen or something. And it reminded me so much of the scene in The Terror where the Ice Master, Mr. Blanky, one of my very favorite characters, during like a blizzard gets attacked by the Tunbach, which is the Shrike of The Terror. And it's part deity, part polar bear, part murderer, a little bit rock and roll.
Part Cuisinart.
And it attacks Mr. Blanky during this like blizzard, and Mr. Blanky is like flying through the rat lines, like swinging on ropes and climbing on masts and sliding down sails, and it's like such a page turner where I remember when I was reading it, I was just like staring and turning the pages as fast as I could, and I was like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? And it was the same thing with this scene where Kassad is like, he finds a space suit and he puts it on and he's like, it's too small. This is a tiny suit. And then he like finds another part of a suit and puts that on. And then there's a helmet problem and he's like finds a corpse and puts that helmet on. And he's just like flying and getting suits and doing things and finding air. And it's like very, very suspenseful. And so I was having the very same experience. And then I was like, I've been here before.
I can see that.
And it was just like that scene.
There was one Goodreads review. There's a typo in it that I love. So someone was complaining about how he just parachutes to Earth, but he spelled it Parashoot. And I was like, you don't count. Sorry, sir.
Parachute. Shoot.
So the cool thing about the Fedman story is like they train like in like I guess like the holodeck with like different eras of Earth, and you know he keeps seeing her like on the fields of Flanders and like in the 13th century.
Yeah, there's a chick.
And it reminds me of a book that I read called This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amar El Motar and Max Gladstone. And basically it's like two people finding themselves at battle after battle after battle, and they fall in love. And
That won Best Novella either last year or the year before.
Definitely heard
I
the title.
loved it.
Yeah.
Well, the woman that he keeps seeing in all of these holodeck training exercises, Moneta, we eventually find out her name is Moneta, or maybe she's a Shrike, but she doesn't have a name for the longest, and she doesn't talk, and she keeps appearing to him in these training simulations, and they don't speak, and they hump, and it just keeps happening, which is also a terror analog. Yeah. So in the terror, so she doesn't. She doesn't
Lady
talk.
Silence.
She's Lady Silence. Lady Silence
Truly
is
silent.
a non-speaking woman. Well, non-speaking doesn't sound quite right. Lady Silence in the terror has had her tongue removed, so she physically is not able to speak. And there's also she has some weird, questionable, problematic sex at a point in that book. This podcast contains spoilers for The Terror by Dan Simmons.
I just love how much I have given y'all the gift of the terror, and that y'all like it makes me so happy. Every day.
I just got someone else to read it recently too.
It's so much fun.
It's so good, but like you could just not read the last 50 pages and just read all the stuff that happens on the ship of like scurvy and an evil polar bear and
the
like
cans are gross.
Yeah, it's so good. And the men turn on each other.
Literally. No.
She has the best boob talk.
Moneta.
We don't know much
absolutely.
about her, but we do know a lot about her body.
So much about her boobs.
And her buttocks.
And her buttocks. And her one mole below her left breast or whatever it was.
And then her nipples are like mirrors when she gets shrikey. That was one of the first boob talks that I wrote down, was that her nipples were like mirrors. So she keeps appearing to him over and over, and then he never seems... Like, what does it say? What is Dan Simmons' opinion of men when he gives us a character who's just like, yeah, all right.
So
He's never like, should we? He's always like, of course we
don't
should.
ever ask if you should, only if you
I guess he's like a 19-year-old army guy. He wants to hump.
And he knows he's in a simulation, so I wonder if part of him thinks it's like not real, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I was giving him that credit, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe, but I don't know. That might be worse. What if who's the participant on the other end of the simulation?
If a hot naked
boss
person
is
lowers
watching.
herself down upon you, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah, you're right. The boss is watching.
I mean, he's training.
Yeah, but
He's at work.
it's in his mind. They can't see him doing this.
I don't know. Maybe.
I would assume I'm being.
Yeah.
I mean, how am I being?
How they know
scored?
if you're being trained?
Yeah,
That's a good point. That's a good
I
point.
could just go eat popcorn in the forest while the Crusades simulation is
Maybe
running.
you get tested. Maybe there's a test.
Oh, this is also funny. So I should have done this in Goodreads, but that same guy was like, he's a space guy. Like, why is he training in the 13th century? He obviously has never read Ender's Game, where you just like play around in a bubble and then you know how to do war.
Yeah, there's a big giant. So that's Kassad, and his connection to Hyperion is that in one of these dream things that he was boning Moneta, and then he was like naked in the time tombs, and then she maybe turned into the Shrike after she had mirror nipples, and he was like, oh no,
What a hangover, man.
no kidding. And then he like, I guess, realized maybe he'd been boning the Shrike all this time.
Dude,
But then
where's
she
my
had the
strike?
vagina dentata.
Oh yeah, I actually didn't even remember that. Why didn't you fill us in on that? I don't remember.
Well,
it.
when she
I don't
starts
remember
to
it either.
become like when they're doing it after they kill all these people on Hyperion, and after he sees the Shrike and follows the Shrike and goes and kills a bunch of ousters, they're doing it, and she starts to turn into the Shrike, like she starts to go metallic and grow thorns and all this stuff.
Vagina transformer.
So he's like, I got to get out of here, and so he gets out of there, and right after he gets out of there, like, you know, just right around that tip. Whammo! it slams shut with blades,
Close
because
for
the
business.
Shrike is made of blades. So
I didn't even notice when I read Vagina Dentata in the Goodreads. I was like, did this guy read the same book as me? And then I did the questionable act of Googling Hyperion and Vagina Dentata. And then
Did you do it in an incognito mode?
asked the same question.
I didn't, and I did it on my work laptop too. So
There's some weird stuff on my work laptop. They'll just have to deal.
the good thing about working in a nonprofit is no one cares. Okay, so that's Colonel Kassad. He's hot, but making some questionable choices.
He had that real hot moment where he had to get the tram car to work, and because it was all iced in, and it wasn't working, and they had to get over the bridle range to get to the time tombs. And Kassad's like, "I'll see if I can make it work from the shack." And they're like, "You'll never make it. It's gonna leave without you." And he's like, "It won't leave without me." And then he goes and he does it, and the tram car starts to take off, and then he's running down the icy place, and he makes a jump, and he catches the tram car.
It was a very Fast and Furious moment.
It's great. I have to say, it's hard to build suspense on a page, and Dan Simmons can really
very
do
good
it.
at it. He's
He
very
really
good at
can. Where I am just turning that page, like biting my nails, like what's about to happen? He really can write suspense. Okay, so that's Kassad. He seems pretty cool. And also, one thing to mention is that the consul finds out when he's assigned to go on this trip that one of these people may be an ouster sympathizer. And he even muses over whether it could be him. So one of these people might be some kind of mole. But we don't. Spoiler, there is no spoiler. This book doesn't really end. So
yeah, I think they heavily imply it's the Templar, but we don't really know. Sure.
Yeah, but then of course it's not really going to be, right? Because he's
also
too
kind
obvious.
of the consul. So
okay. So the next one is the poet, who is Martin Salinas. And here's something that I wonder. Whenever there's a writer in a book, I wonder, is it a stand-in for the novelist? And I did some interneting to see if Dan Simmons was identified with this character at all. And I didn't find anything, but it immediately made me think of the Philip Jose Farmer character in To Your Scattered Bodies Go, where he was very upfront about this is me, same initials, the writer in my novel is me. And I just kept wondering about that because he first of all, he's awful. He's such an asshole.
Oh, he's horrible.
Every time he spoke, I wanted to throw the book. And Dan Simmons is also kind of an asshole. And then he does a lot of ruminating on writing for money versus writing your masterpiece and how soul crushing it is to write for money, which people like money. So you liked all your Farcasters and your mansions. So it couldn't have been that bad.
I think one of the most unbelievable parts of this book isn't any of the technology or the robots or the Shrike or the time tombs. It's that 5 billion people bought a book of poetry.
That's what his name kept bugging me, and I just looked it up, and Silenus is the god of wine, an old pagan god of wine who is the precursor to Dionysus. And I think that's his name.
Well, the fact that he becomes
the point of his name
becomes Pan the goat god, basically.
Yeah, he's basically he's kind of like Vice and
Milady-ish kind of too. I don't know.
Yeah, but I think he's
so rude.
He's sort of the lush poet, Vice, let yourself do, pleasure-seeking part of humanity to me. He's very id.
Yeah.
Or whatever the one is that you can't
He's definitely
control.
not attractive to be.
No, but he got that Seder dude. Okay.
So there's a quote from Martin Salinas that I took down where he talks about indulging himself in a pretentious orgy of obfuscation. And I wrote, is he talking about this book? Because this book, while I do like this book, it is kind of a pretentious orgy of obfuscation.
It is.
Well, I read 500 pages of book and I don't know what's going on. All I have are questions.
Maybe Simmons is being a little self-deprecating with him.
Yeah, well, I wondered.
Yeah.
I wondered if he was.
The ridiculous pursuit of writing is sort of a... it's a lot of navel gazing, a lot of taking yourself too seriously, a lot of wondering what your contribution is to the world.
This book is confusing, but I feel less lost than I do in other books for some reason. I don't know why.
Well, I think all these people are, as much as we don't, it's also just there's not much to identify with them. We also really identify with them. He's very good at drawing a very human character, I think, and so there's a lot of anchor points for the reader, I think.
The individual narratives all make sense.
Yeah.
It's just, the overarching question of, what does it all mean?
When he gets to the metaphysical, that's where he kind of loses me. He's not great at describing, I think, what's in his head about these metaphysical parts, like the cruciform thing and a lot about the Shrike, and then some other stuff. I don't quite see what he is painting with those things, but for the narratives themselves, I'm usually there.
I think what I like about him is throughout the book, there'd be little sentences that would be so chock full of an idea that it would create the world even bigger. At one point, I underlined something that was and then 300 years of living in space had changed the Outsiders dramatically. That's just huge. That reminds me of a book that we need to read still, Seven Eves, where once humanity goes to space and stays there for a while, things are going to change. And that's such a cool idea. And then he goes back onto the present day plot, but he just put that in your idea, and that helps build the world incrementally.
That's such a cool idea because we've evolved for so long for this planet that it's going to be really interesting to see how things change, and because you can't change everything in 300 years, so they're still going to be earthbound evolution, and then
their bones might be lighter. They might, vision might become less important.
maybe we'll all become birds.
Do y'all know that the shrike is a bird?
Oh, yes, it is a bird.
Yeah.
And yes.
Yes.
So Martin Salinas, asshole person, annoying person. He's so rude. He's very rude to everyone.
One of his quotes is, in my misogynist moment of this episode.
Oh, great.
That's not surprising.
Yeah, I can't wait till we get there. All right. We talked a lot about the soldier. What else? Anything else about?
Sad King Billy
Martin?
sounds like a weird band from the early 2000s.
Oh yeah. So
No, that's Bonnie Prince Billy. Never mind.
So here's an important thing about Martin Salinas. He was a successful writer and then was like, I'm tired of writing for money, blah, and then became not a successful writer because he just wanted to write what he wanted to write. I don't know. And he acts very like martyred about it. But then it's like, maybe you shouldn't have mortgaged yourself so much, sir. You sold all those books. If you hadn't bought like 11 million Farcasters and mansions, you could just live on that and be pretty happy.
I like the
reminds
idea
me.
of pooping through a Farcaster.
Yeah,
into
I
something.
loved his house. So, like, every room in his house is, like, a different, like, your bathroom is, like, a raft in Hawaii, and your bedroom is, like, on the
I
moon.
love that idea.
That is cool.
Yeah,
Again,
so a Farcaster, if you haven't read it and are listening to us talk, is just like a doorway to another location.
in my Atlanta-based Hyperion glossary, the Farcaster is a MARTA stop.
Except it's instantaneous instead of when will the train arrive?
Will the train
No one
arrive?
knows.
I mean, it's an equally philosophical question, which is,
That's true.
part of it.
That's true. So yeah, you can instantaneously relocate by stepping through a Farcaster. So there are some public Farcasters, and then like very, very, very rich people have them in their homes. And he was a very, very, very rich person who spent too much money. And then when he decided he wanted to just write his cantos, which these books are called the Hyperion cantos, which is further supports my theory that Martin is a Dan Simmons stand-in.
No.
Anyway, Martin had a lot of money. He doesn't have money anymore. And so he went to Hyperion to go write like his great American novel. And he's got writer's block, he's got writer's block, he's got writer's block. And then suddenly he can start writing again. And it coincides with the Shrike going around hugging people to death to the point where Sad King Billy, who's like the president of Hyperion or whatever, thinks that maybe Martin Salinas is controlling the Shrike, or maybe he's like a serial killer. He's doing the killing, is the Shrike. He gets suspicious, and he comes for Martin, burns all of Martin's great American novel.
I got very upset when he did that.
Because he didn't put them on, like,
There's no
The
disky.
internet.
There's no
Yeah.
disky with all that stuff on there.
Yeah, so
No
then
fat line, no squirt.
he's squirt. So he burns all of his great American novel, and then the Shrike shows up and hugs King Billy to death. And so then Martin can't write anymore because the Shrike's not killing. Like, Martin can only write when the Shrike is killing. So there's some connection there that either Martin doesn't know or doesn't tell us, but there's some like very deep connection. Or maybe Martin is just inspired by Carnage because he's just kind of a shitty person and he's lived so long that everything else is probably kind of boring to him. So who knows?
He's from Old Earth, which is,
Yeah,
800
original
years.
Earth.
I was trying to determine from what he was saying how much of his time he'd actually spent awake. Because, like, he spends
Yeah.
2 really long periods in cryo
Yeah, and he
or
has
whatever.
time debt some, but he also, like, takes those pulsing treatments.
Yeah,
to-
so I was trying to figure out, like, he's really old, but I don't know how long
He's actually lived.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
I was
A fair
trying to figure that
amount,
out. As
yeah.
really, I don't think you can, but so he's from Old Earth, which is interesting. He's like one of the last people before Old Earth is not present anymore in this story.
I like some of his phrasing for things, like the big mistake. Like, that's going to happen probably in about 50 years.
Oh, no.
It may have already happened here.
I think they give us a time for it in the book. It's like
Yeah, it's like
2200 or
yeah.
2300 or something like that.
We'll be gone. So.
Let's see. Okay,
Will
so that's Martin's connection to Hyperion. He used to live there, maybe friends with the Shrike, watched the Shrike kill Sad King Billy, and then the Shrike didn't kill Martin.
Not before Martin burnt Sad King Billy alive in the little Shrike's arms. Like, Shrike's hugging Billy. Billy goes onto Spike on Shrike's chest, and then Martin's pours kerosene all over them and lights them on fire.
I think you read a different book than I did.
Yeah, I don't remember that either.
Oh.
But to be fair, like, I was page turning this book, so I'm sure I missed some
Well,
details.
and I read it too long ago, so just like a little backstory, I tried to read this last year and I got really bored 50 pages in and didn't finish reading it. So I thought this book is very long. The print is very tiny. I'm going to need a lot of time to read it. And then, as often happens when I actually sit down to read and I put my phone in a different room, I like the book a lot more than I do when I try to read it and look at my phone at the same time. So I ended up reading it very quickly, like a month and a half ago, because I thought I was going to need all this time. So now I don't really remember much of it. So it's a good thing that I'm DMing this episode. Okay, so that's Martin. The next one, I think probably everyone's favorite story. The Scholar.
Yeah, I love this.
Poor Saul Weintraub and his weird baby, Rachel.
Benjamin Button.
So Rachel has Benjamin Button's disease. Which means she's aging in reverse. So we meet Saul on the ship. Everyone's on the tree ship together. And we meet Saul, and he's carrying her around like a baby Bjorn. But he's described as like an older man. So it's like, what's he doing with this baby? And it doesn't tell you. It's the consul's always just like, oh, Saul put his baby down or bounced his baby or burped his baby. And I mean, it was making me crazy. I was like, who brought a baby?
You have a baby in a bar
on this like murder mission. What are you doing? But then we find out Rachel was like some kind of sexy archaeologist or something at the time tombs. And something happened while she was in the time tombs, and she got time tombed, and it made her start aging backwards. Mm-hmm. And also her memory was going away at the same time. So like tomorrow she would be 1 day younger than she was today. And it would be like, today never happened. So by the time she's aged backwards to like age 10, she remembers what happened on the actual day before when she was that age. So like, oh, I have a test at school tomorrow, she thinks, because her memory is like regressing too. So it's very interesting. She's not just Benjamin Buttonsing in the sense that she's turning into a baby. Her mind is also working backwards, and time is going backwards.
Yeah.
So her parents have been like searching and searching for a cure, and then like the media finds out about her, and she becomes sort of like a sideshow in the media, and people start coming to their town. So they escape to they're offered a place in like safe Jewish settlement on another planet, and they go there for a while. And then Saul's wife, who's been devoted to taking care of their reverse baby, they've been so devoted to her and so protective, and they're so loving, and it's so sad. And Saul's wife he convinces her, he's like, just give yourself a break. And she's going to go see her sister. And she dies in a space plane crash.
Well, teenagers just hit her head on.
It's such a sad story, but it's so touching and moving.
I know,
it's awful, and I love it.
So then Saul like goes to the Shrike Church, and he's like, can you help us? And they're like, we hate you. And then he's like, well, I hate you too, but can you help us? And then finally he gets to get picked for, well, Rachel, I guess, is really the pilgrim, and he's carrying her. Is that right? Do you think Rachel is the pilgrim?
They argue about whether she counts because she's not going of her own volition because she's a baby.
His is the hardest one for me to figure out what he's going there to do.
Oh, I think he's going to go, like, maybe if she touches a time tomb, she'll reverse something magical will happen.
Yeah, they're all going there to ask the Shrike something, right? And so I'm trying, and he has that recurring dream where it's like, go sacrifice your kid.
There's some religious things here that I don't understand too.
Yeah, so you know,
it's the story of Abraham and Isaac, which Amy can tell you.
I mean, it's Judaism. Marks its founding at that, basically. Jews are all the sons of Abraham. And so this beginning of, I mean, listen, any Jews listening, please feel free to correct all of this, because I'm sure most of it's wrong. But Abraham gets called by God to sacrifice his son, and Abraham doesn't want to do it because he loves his son. But at the last minute, God's like, no, I just wanted to see if he would. Basically. And so Saul's having this dream where he's being told to take in the same words that God uses in the Bible, he's being told to take his kid to Hyperion and burn her, offer in a sacrifice at a place he'll tell him to go to. And he's really struggling with this. He's like, I don't want to do it. I love my kid. Why would I do that? And he's struggling with the whole concept of this religion being based on this test, right?
That's a trickster God if there ever was one.
And so he goes through this like...
God's like, psych.
I mean, he was.
Man, the Old Testament God was not messing around. Like, he was not a nice God.
So Saul's wife, Rachel's mother, they find out they've both been having this similar dream.
Yeah.
So I think they agreed that they were going to go to Hyperion. And I think what they were going to try to do is offer themselves in exchange for Rachel. I think that's what they were going to do.
But then at some point, he's like, well, that hasn't worked. We've done that before. Like, he talks about... Jewish parents in the Holocaust hiding their children and taking themselves to the oven so their children can survive, right? And that sort of thing. So he's like, that hasn't worked. What next? And it seems to me he concludes that what is next is sacrificing your kid. But that doesn't seem to jive with him. And it also doesn't seem to jive with what he does in his dream, which is go confront this thing that is telling him to take his kid. And he's like, no.
Yeah.
It's very
So I just can't figure out what he's doing.
Well, and I think like nothing has worked. And also she's so young at this point that it's like what looks like it must be on the horizon is her just disappearing, like poofing and not existing anymore. So it's like, if that's going to happen, then is maybe dying.
What does it matter?
Dying on Hyperion. Like, it's worth the try because it's the only thing left to try. So I kind of think that's where he is.
Move of desperation, sort of.
It's
a Hail Mary for sure.
Yeah.
It's so sad. I mean, he's so sad and he's so nice. He's like the only character in this book where I'm just like, oh, I want to pinch your little cheekies. You're so nice.
This line gutted me.
The fruit salad.
Rachel's last word was "mama," uttered when she was 5 months old. Because then the day before, she's just not going to talk. That's crazy. This story, I think, hit me so emotionally because it reminded me of the short story, "This is the Story of Your Life" by Ted Chiang, which is what Arrival is based on. And it's just written so well, and it's just he knows what's coming. Like he's living her backwardsness too, so it's just it gets you in the gut.
And like trying to protect her psychologically, or when she asks
lie to her every
questions.
day.
Yeah, they just constantly have to be lying to her.
We'll see Mama
recreate
tomorrow.
her little birthdays and like do everything.
And she doesn't understand why her friends aren't at her birthday party because her friends are all like 40 now. Oh,
Like I kind of don't completely understand how she goes forward in time, but is aging backwards. It's kind of like how I didn't understand the movie Memento, because that movie...
He has this moment where he tries to explain it in the book, but all he does is just put like science babble into sentence format to explain it. It's like, what she has is an entropic field that's basically a singularity or something like that.
I was like, am I supposed to know what an entropic field is?
I think you're just like, okay.
That's like that's like that game Space Team that I like.
Yeah.
Flip the forward mobilizer.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's really sad. So that's why there's a baby. Mm-hmm. And for the first like 300 pages, Kevin kept looking over at me because I'd be like, why is there a baby? And Kevin had read it and he'd just look at me and be like, you just stop yelling. We just wait. We just keep reading the book. But it is not true that all will be revealed.
No.
That's often true, but it's not true here. Okay. So that's him and that's the baby with the Benjamin Button's disease. Oh, and then there was the time in the book where they took her to the doctor and the doctor was like, there's no name for this disease. And I was like, have they forgotten all about Benjamin Buttons?
That old Earth movie from...
Yeah.
Does anybody know why they called it Merlin disease?
Because Merlin in The Once and Future King ages backwards.
He does?
Mm-hmm.
I read that. I don't remember that.
I reread that book every May. It's my favorite May book to read.
Really?
That's like I read A Never-Ending Story every December.
Really?
Yeah.
I used to read A Confederacy of Dunces all the time. I haven't read it in a few years.
You should redo it.
But I used to read it all the time. Okay. Our next character was supposed to be Het Mastine, the starship captain, the Templar, who's got a cool tree ship. Mm-hmm. But suddenly, when it becomes his turn, he's missing.
I don't like that part.
Who done it?
Yeah, but we don't ever...
Well, have you read the next one?
No.
Maybe he's back in the next
Things make a little more sense. But this book is just... It's a setup. It's completely a setup.
Yeah, I guess I have to read the next one.
Well, it adds to the mystery too. Like, imagine they're all they are all on a train at this point. They're all in their little train car, and then suddenly someone goes missing.
Well, he bugs me because he's not the only he's the only non-human.
Yeah.
That I'm assuming these people are not human, but I guess I don't know that for sure.
Het Mastine is a non-human?
Well, I guess he is. He's Templar and he is taller and looks different.
I thought he was just tall.
Oh, that's
Is he an alien or is he just tall?
I thought he was just tall.
You might be right. He confuses me.
Do you know that Bradley Cooper has been working with the Sci-Fi Channel to get this made into a miniseries?
I did.
Really?
I've known that for 90 minutes. I read that a very little while ago.
Bradley Cooper.
Mm-hmm. He's like apparently a big fan of this book.
What are the odds
he speaks
that Jennifer
French.
Lawrence will be in it?
I feel like Bradley Cooper's a good guy.
Do you?
I do.
I get heebie-jeebie vibes.
I know
for him.
he seems broy to me because the first thing I ever saw him in, and maybe the only thing, was that movie where they all go to Las Vegas. The Hangover, is it that one?
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
So I just think he's that guy. Blech.
I didn't like the way he was looking at Lady Gaga at that one Grammys or whatever they were saying in the
Oh
Oscars.
my God. I know. Well, I didn't mind. I didn't mind
it.
not
I
like
think about it sometimes if you know what I mean.
I think they liked each other, but I saw an interview where he speaks French, and I just think that a man that speaks French is special. So.
Of course he does.
It's like a man with cats.
I feel like he's a fancy fuckboy.
What does a fuckboy mean?
he's one of those guys
He's a
who's just
player.
kind of out for himself, a little bit of a player, but they're very charismatic. They're good at luring you in and then making you think things are going to be good and then taking off.
Good God, I don't know much about him at all, except for that duet with Lady Gaga.
Yeah.
Oh, this is all speculation.
I know like 3
I don't know
things.
anything about him either. He's kind of like Matthew McConaughey to me. He looks like he doesn't shower all that much.
Oh, yeah, he does have dirty hair.
Yeah. I don't know. There's something about those two.
I can't judge. I don't wash my hair frequently anymore.
I mean, I can judge.
Well, Hyperion Cantos.fandom.com does not say that Hetmastine is anything. It doesn't say anything, so I would assume that he's vanilla human.
Yeah, I guess there's no reason to think he's not human.
Well, Hepmastine does sound like a Jedi name.
Right.
And there's somebody on the Jedi Council in episodes 1 and 2 that's like tall. His name is Ki-Adi-Mundi, and he's got like a conehead head, and that's what I pictured.
Maybe that's what I was
You
thinking.
just spoiled myself a little, but...
Oh no! You can't Google anything.
I didn't even think about it. I forgot that there's like 17 more books.
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't know where he is. He ran away. Digression. So, the one I have the most to say about is the detective, Braun Lamia.
I liked her little noir story.
Well, I liked the beginning of it. So the beginning of it is kind of my feminist favorite, where John Keats, this beautiful droid, walks into her office, and it reminds me of of all the gin joints in town.
Yeah,
She
right,
had to walk
exactly.
into
Oh,
my.
no,
It was
yeah.
that kind of vibe.
Yeah, definitely.
You've got to read it with a transatlantic. He's Johnny.
Yeah,
Johnny,
I mean,
see?
Yeah, she has a trench coat. She has a pistol.
Yeah,
she's like,
she's a
I knew this
detective.
one was going to be different when he walked into my office.
Yeah. And she's like ruminating on he's so good looking, so she's like, oh, well, how could I say no? Yeah, it starts off like a sort of classic detective story with the gender roles turned on their head, and then ultimately I was disappointed by how it turned out. But
Yeah, well, yeah.
let's see, it feels feminist, but then it like turns into this romance that I didn't love. So John Keats comes into her office and he wants to find out who killed him, which is also a very fun setup. He's like, there has been a murder. And she's like, well, why don't you call the police? And
Keats,
he's like,
famously Southern.
yeah, he's like, you don't understand. And she's like, who was murdered? And he's like, me.
Colonel Jonathan Keats.
I say. So Foghorn Leghorn comes in her office and he says someone's murdered him. So she eventually finds out he's like very hiding the ball, which is strange when you're like, I've been murdered. You kind of need to just lead with like what the deal is, which he doesn't do. But eventually he's like, yeah, I was murdered. I'm an AI and somebody turned me off for a period of time. And then she's kind of like, well, who cares? Like, you're on now, you're fine. And then, as we've seen in other books, when an AI gets turned off, it's like staggering. It made me think of Jane in Ender's Game. Mm-hmm. In Speaker for the Dead.
Yeah.
When Ender gets mad at her and he turns her off. And for her, it's like centuries of like not receiving data or any interaction or anything. It's like staggering for her, even though for him it was like an hour that he was mad at her. And it's kind of the same thing for John Keats. And he's called John Keats because he is an AI, but he was created by basically implanting all the information that is available about John Keats, and then his personality comes out of that. So he's like, I'm not John Keats. I'm made of John Keats.
I'm what people think about John Keats.
Yeah. And so he's his own man, but made of the available parts of John Keats.
Yeah. So do we think he has like, is he like blood and bone?
Yeah, I got the impression he had a regular human meat sack, but that he had been given a personality, basically.
Yeah.
I think he has some circuits. Don't you think he's got to have
his
some
brain.
circuits?
I mean, I guess I thought what they were doing was, like, creating a person, out of the scaffolding of another person and putting it in a person, like a real person.
And suddenly, now that we're saying this, it makes me think of Frankenstein and Shelley was friends. Mary Shelley, they were all friends.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, he's a little bit of a Frankenstein.
How'd they turn him off if he was fully person?
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
right.
So I think there's got to be some degree of circuitry.
I think he's got like,
But he bleeds, so it's like...
I think there's just like, Johnny Mnemonic, he's got something in his head.
Is he like a Borg?
Oh, it's a Keanu Reeves movie from the 90s. He's just like a guy that, he's a
No,
human.
yeah,
he just
Johnny
carries
Mnemonic,
like memory sticks in his head. But
Is it an Emma Joe?
hold on.
The wiki says they have a totally human body.
Okay, cool.
Yes!
But no circuits?
No.
Then how do you turn him off?
Yeah. You turn Well,
Hence Braun's confusion
Maybe
about the
maybe
murder.
the body just passes out or something.
maybe there's some synthetic neurons or something that counts
You're a
as.
synthetic neuron.
Okay. So she meets him. She's trying to find out who murdered him. They have some adventures. There's a flying carpet.
Oh, the flying carpet. I just think of...
That was so weird.
I just think of the one from Aladdin.
Of
and
course.
It's like a dog. It's sweet.
The chase was very like that chase in Inception when they're running through all the dream rooms. Was it Inception where they do that?
Yeah.
Also,
a hawking mat.
being John Malkovich, where they're running through all the weird rooms.
Yeah.
Remember that part?
Nope.
Sure.
That's what it reminded me of.
So she
And
ends
then there was a magic carpet.
I just thought of Aladdin.
So Braun ends up killing this guy like in a public park who's chasing after them, but it turns out like he's maybe an AI too, but then they find out that John Keats hired him as a bodyguard a couple days before that, and there was a Templar there in a bar, so maybe Hetmastine.
A Templar, a Lucis, and a Cybrid walk into a bar.
Oh yeah, Cybrid. Is that what they're called in
Cybrid,
here?
yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So she's trying to protect him. They fall in love. Very unprofessional. And I just didn't like it. They fall in love. They have a bunch of sex. Apparently, Cybrids have sperm. So
Fully human body.
Yeah. So she gets pregnant. And I was so bothered by the idea that in the 29th century, a woman with a dangerous, solitary, violent job gets pregnant by accident. First of all, she will be on the pill. She will have a Mirena. She will have some prevention in place.
I hope that in the future you have to opt into having kids. That's what.
Right. Like, I just hope that by the 29th century, unplanned pregnancy isn't a thing. But if it is, I feel like she would go straight and be like, no, this is not my plans. Like, we're taking care of this.
Life finds
A way. It bothered me so much. I thought it was ludicrous. And so I checked to find out like when was birth control readily available, and it was readily available in 1989 when this was published. So I was just like,
the pills. From
I
like
mean,
the 60s.
I know, but I was just
Yeah.
trying to get. I was like, was it like we didn't talk about it? Dan Simmons, maybe he didn't know any women.
Every woman in this book is a mother or a
I
yeah,
know.
An infant or
yeah.
someone
I
who is just to be made
know.
love to.
He doesn't do well with women.
So yeah, that's why I found the her story like it started out. I was like, oh, this is good, and then it started out like, oh, she loves him.
Oh, wait, I
and
guess
she's pregnant.
the woman who calls the consul is a woman. Is the person who
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
one.
yeah,
That's
Yeah.
one.
Well, that's how you.
Maida Gladstone is also a woman.
That's
too.
how you.
Yeah.
That's what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how you show that you're not a.
Yeah,
that you're-
exactly. You put
There's a lady
a
president.
side character
In the
in a
future, women
position
can
of
do
power.
anything.
Yeah.
But actually, they're just mothers.
So I was disappointed by that. And then so her reason for going to Hyperion is, of course, John Keats is like got a fixation with Hyperion because original John Keats wrote Hyperion and Time's a Flat Circle, and it's all connected. And so she feels called to take this fetus that she is carrying to Hyperion. So
And-
really, like, is she the pilgrim? I don't know.
Well, and he's in her head too.
He's
now.
in her head, so I think he's
oh
still
yeah,
the pilgrim.
she's got the imago in her
Another
head.
example
Yeah.
of how he influenced another writer. This is such an influential book, guys.
I think Keats is still the pilgrim in this to me. Like,
Yeah.
but she's just carrying him around because women are just surrogates for whatever.
I mean, she's a
whatever's inside.
A wandering womb.
Yeah, she's a wandering womb, wandering Jew, wandering womb.
Okay, dad time. Want to hear a dad story?
Yeah.
Why are dads?
My dad, one time, told me he was my real parent and my mother was just a carrier. I know. And I was like, I definitely was younger than 10 because I remember where we lived when he said it. Why are dads? Dads in the audience? Do better. So yeah, when Braun's just like pregnant and carrying like John Keats' imago and John Keats's Cybrid baby, I was very triggered by that. I was like, this is rude.
I can see why.
This is rude.
So her whole thing has something else. It has bigger implications than just Keats, though, because like I did not quite understand this, but there was a lot of discussion about how the AI are trying to also destroy humanity.
But in a different way.
Right, but they can't get a bead on Hyperion because it's somehow outside the technocore somehow. And so
Oh, because of like the way that like the
there's
time tombs fuck with
her
stuff.
going there with John Keats and her has something to do with defying the bad AI, but I wasn't quite clear on what. So it is a little more than just she's carrying out his wishes. I think it has something to do with that too, like trying to stop interstellar war or something.
Yeah. I had a very hard time with the interstellar politics.
I didn't understand
which is always a weak point for me. I don't understand
Well,
I don't think he's
interplanetary
good. I don't
politics.
think he's good at explaining it. I
Well,
mean,
and there's
he's
like, I know that the council's like at this point a triple agent, so that's confusing.
yeah,
Anything else about her?
nah. Although she sounds very strong and she's good in a fight.
She is. She's very muscular.
She has extra layers of muscle. She says it several times.
She has curly hair,
Yes.
and she's pregnant.
Yes.
Barefoot.
And she does not like Martin Silenus.
No. Oh, that is such a funny thing. I wonder if that's another like Dan Simmons trying to be like overtly pro-woman or something. You know, like he's like, no, she's not a stereotype because look how violent she is.
Oh, right.
Like, because Martin Silenus, like, he's a real piece of shit, but like she threatens to kill him all the time.
Yeah.
Like he says something rude, and it's like she reaches for her pistol every time he's. And then, but then I'm like, it really takes the teeth out of you reaching for your pistol when you do it all the time.
She does finally jack him up against the wall or whatever.
Oh my god!
Like when they're in the bloody Het Mastine room.
I mean, in the movie of this, if Cara Dune wasn't canceled for being an awful person, I would cast her in this.
She would be a good one. She'd definitely be a good one.
Okay. And our last pilgrim is the consul, the last one to tell his story. But he doesn't really tell his story. He tells his great-grandfather
It happens a lot in this book.
story.
Grandfather, I think.
And I thought I had... So he tells the story of his great-grandfather who was married to a woman named Siri.
I don't think they were married. Were they married?
I think they were married.
Okay.
I think they were married. They didn't have a marriage.
It started with a lot of statutory rapes. So I didn't like it.
God. Okay, so that's another terror analog. This next segment will contain spoilers for the novel The Terror by Dan Simmons. So, at a point in The Terror, an adult character who I won't name is having intercourse with Lady Silence and thinking to himself during the course of the intercourse how she looks to be about the same age as his 15-year-old niece. And that's the point when I think you can stop reading it because all the cool boat stuff has already happened. You could just stop reading it.
Yeah.
Or actually stop reading it one page before that happens. So I was forcibly reminded of that. So the great-grandfather, whatever, he lands on this, he's on this planet. It's like, sounds so nice. There are like living islands that swim around and move around, and humanity put dolphins there, I think, and the dolphins have been like, yeah, and really taken to this planet, and they're happy dolphins. And then like, well, we just fuck it up like what we do, which is so funny because, you know, Dan Simmons is like outspokenly hates on Greta Thunberg, and it is really at odds with what I feel like he's trying to tell us in this book.
Well, she's a woman.
Well, she's also a teenage girl, and he has a predilection with thinking about teenage girls, so maybe it has something to do with that.
The planet reminds me of Valerian in the City of a Thousand Planets with those creatures that like make the pearls.
Yes.
It's a very pretty planet. The movie is very silly.
It sounds like a lovely planet. And of course we mess it all up. So he's like in the space military force. It's always in all
Space
capital
Force.
letters. Space Force or Force Space.
It's Force Space.
Force colon space.
Yep.
And he goes there with his friend. They decide to go out and party one night. They find like a local Burning Man festival. And he meets this girl named Siri, which is a name that didn't age well, so I found it distracting. And he meets Siri, and they like sneak off from the party, and they bone. And he's 19 and she's 15, which is like,
Brushing up against weird.
yeah, for sure.
Yep.
But where it gets real weird is when he's a grown man, and he reminisces to himself about their first sexual encounter, which would be it would be an okay thing to do. That's a memory that lives in your head. You were both teens, but the terms that adult man Dan Simmons uses for adult character, great-grandpa of adult male character, the consul, he thinks about her budding breasts. And I just want to go kill
How
somebody.
can anybody be attracted to a budding breast?
I mean,
so adolescent.
Well, the thing is, too, when you're an adolescent, you don't think of it in those terms. You're just like, a teenage boy sees a boob and is like, a boob.
Yeah.
So the adult man, like, in your memory, you should just be thinking, like, boob. But no, the adult man talking about the adult man, talking about his great-grandmother, is like, her budding breasts.
I mean, every time he recollects her body, because she ages and he doesn't, it's just like, but I miss that young, tight body.
I know. It's so gross. So he's like still serving his force space, and she stays on her planet, and she becomes like almost their love becomes like a legendary story, which is basically why they continue their relationship, because they feel like it's necessary for her to do what needs to be done on this planet and like protect the resources of this planet. So that seems like they really thought a lot of their role in the hay. I bet no one would have been super upset if she hadn't married him. And they have a couple of kids. And every time he comes to see her, he's like, she's 37. Look at her neck. And I'm like looking in the mirror. I was like, my neck.
It's like he's going off on a whaling voyage, but he doesn't age and comes back every 6 years, checks in, gets her pregnant, then leaves again.
So that's... Yeah.
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 That's true.
Except like at least when you go on the whaling voyage, you come back looking bad too.
Right. That's what like he gets to go off on these voyages, come back young and perky. And
no time debt.
And then like they talk about how
she has the inexorable just
she never
march towards death.
she never had sex with anyone else, she says, and he believes her. You know he did. You know he did.
This is such a good short story about like modern colonization too. Like when he's talking to her about like what's going to happen to their pristine planet when they open up the Farcaster. It's just like it also reminded me of like what's going to happen to your neighborhood when they, build a new bougie condo. It's like and there's going to be this and there's going to be that.
Space gentrification. It's interesting because it definitely is like a cautionary tale. And what happens to this planet is sad. And she's like a little bit of an eco-terrorist, right? Like she's got like a bomb planted in her tomb, and
it's awesome.
And so it's interesting that in the 20-teens, Dan Simmons is shitting on a teenage girl who's like, please don't ruin the planet. I have to live here longer than you do.
Did he read his own book?
I got no answers for you. I got no answers
This
for you.
man contains multitudes. I hate him and I love him.
I know.
He's a good writer.
Yeah, and with really cool ideas.
Well, it's like it's the Orson Scott Card thing too, where like you're able to be so insightful about drawing these characters, and you also suck now.
It makes me think about like, especially with male writers in books like this, is like so insightful, looking up to humanity's defaults and problems and our curses, but then also like I gotta talk about these titties. Like you don't have to. Like
you know what? I just thought of something. I'm not so sure that we're supposed to see her as super sympathetic, because so the consul's whole thing is that he's carrying this vengeance for them, right? And so he infiltrates all these things so that he can ultimately, I don't know, destroy the hegemony, right? And like the way he does that is by destroying humanity, which we're not supposed to see as a good thing, and like is all because of her.
Yeah, that's true.
Like it's not so much that she loves her planet. I think that we're supposed to see is that like they start to hate people. And like and to me this book is just like, I don't know, it's sort of a love story to people. Like, this is what people are. This is what humans are. And so, I don't know.
Well, I think that's a good point, that
Complicated,
there's just like
messy,
a complexity
good, bad.
there,
Yeah.
that there isn't anything that's like all good or all bad.
Yeah.
But I also do think that we can agree that like killing all those dolphins is all bad.
It's bad.
Yeah.
the floating gray lumps.
I was so sad when I read that. I have to hand it to Dan Simmons. Like, he can make me very scared, very sad.
Yeah.
He's like a Disney movie.
I mean, I think
a lot that's very moving.
I think it's pretty objectively bad what was going to happen to the planet. Like, it seemed like there's no good to come from
If
it.
you dig too far into my theory, it doesn't hold up.
Well,
but.
I mean, I think your theory does hold up, but let's like carrying out the like most grotesque conclusion of like this bad thing that we did to this happy place. Like, and are we able to not do that? Like, are we able to not consume and ruin everything?
It's inevitable.
Right.
Like, every time we go anywhere, like, that's why we need the Templars to be like, hey, maybe don't, eradicate the Arctic wraiths or whatever they were. And, like, maybe we can protect these trees, because humanity just wants to go destroy.
I mean, I do like being a human. I have a good time, but we shouldn't go to space. I mean, I want to go to space, but we shouldn't colonize.
We can stay here, we can destroy here, then we'll be gone. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have fun. We still have ice cream and barbecue, and it'll be great. But
there's no need to ruin things for other civilizations.
We shouldn't be going to space.
Okay, so everybody tells their story, and then they get to the end of their journey where they have to move forward on foot, and somebody starts singing we're off to see the wizard, and they're all like, that old Earth song. And they join hands, and they all start singing, we're off to see the wizard, and they
The group hug. Do you remember the group hug?
trip trap off into the sun, holding hands and singing, and that's confusing.
It's
and
so
that's
strange.
The end of the book.
Like, okay. My whole thing was, okay, was this just supposed to show, like, people, like, humans, like, they build community no matter what? Like, what are we supposed to take away from that? Like, it's like, the console tells a story, he's like, and then I did a thing that's going to destroy humanity, and everybody's like, should we kill him? And then they're like, guess not, and then they have a group hug.
I think it's just that
Strange.
he couldn't publish a 900-page book, so he's like, I'll make a part 2.
That is what I read.
Yeah.
It's such an odd moment.
It is
Wait,
so
hold on.
weird.
We forgot to mention on the cover of this book, the ship that goes onto the sea of grass.
The ship!
Oh, it's an actual boat with sails.
Yeah, so like I picture them like up on the poop deck telling their stories.
Oh, wow. See, I was picturing one of those, like, fan boats in the Everglades.
Oh, interesting. No, this is a straight up boat, like a 3-masted ship.
I'm not good at imagining things. I mean, I'm good at imagining scenarios. Very good at that.
Yeah.
Not good at imagining objects and places.
I just saw it.
It was given to me, so that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sure was. So when I look at my book cover, the only thing that I really see, it always draws my attention, is this little label
For Linda.
the book's past owner has on it. Linda Munson had this book. I got this.
And she wanted everybody to know it.
Yeah, I got this used book at Half Price Books, I believe, and it has a sticker on the front with a little bird. Maybe it's a shrike, and was Linda Munson's book, and it has her address on it. So she liked this book well enough that if it got lost, she wanted you to mail it back to her.
Does everybody, y'all know what a shrike is, right?
It's
a bird.
A bird that crucifies people on a tree, right?
No. Yes. A bird that crucifies people on a tree.
Well, not people, but like a bug.
Yeah, it keeps its food on little thorns.
Yeah.
So it keeps.
Oh.
Yeah, so it like.
And
it saves food for later. Like, it's crazy.
Oh my god! Is it this? Is this the
Does
shrike
not look
on
like it.
Linda's
It does not
label?
look like that.
Okay.
Wait.
So Linda's address label has a bird on it.
No, that is a woodpecker.
Yeah. Thought woodpeckers have a red head, not a red butt.
Yeah.
It's probably not a shrike. That would be like really too much of a coincidence if Linda had a shrike.
Linda
on her
would be my
address
new
label.
hero if she had that.
If so, then we gotta find Linda.
Well, maybe she's still at this address.
No, not a shrike.
No.
Shrikes do not have that red butt.
Could be the blood of its victims.
They're also called butcher birds.
Oh my god. All right. Any more general discussion?
I think that's all for the general.
Okay. So, feminist favorite. I already said mine. It was the beginning of Braun Lamia's detective story. It was so promising.
My feminist favorite is there's not much. I think Braun Lamia is great for being a small business owner. And it's awesome that little backwards baby Rachel got to become an archaeologist because she had a career before she started aging backwards.
She was off. She was
living her dream.
aiming at a good future.
Yeah,
she was. And her
she went to grad school.
her family loved her. And it seemed
they
like
loved her so much.
I know. She had that nice boyfriend.
Yeah.
Soul as a caregiver is kind of feminist too.
Truly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
I mean, he's good. I mean,
he is very loving.
He's a good daddy.
He's very loving, very expressive, very caring. That was pretty much all I had. Was
Braun Lamia
the
was pretty
promising
much-
setup. Oh, one thing I do want to mention about her, fun fact, is that John Keats's fiance was Fanny Braun. And of course he wrote the poem Lamia also.
Yeah, and that's about like a werewolf or a vampire.
Well, so Lamia in many folklore traditions is thought of as like a vampire type character. He's probably referring to Lamia in like Greek mythology, I think. So she's like a serpent. She meets some other guy. He wants some help finding his girlfriend. She's like, "Yeah, I'll help you." And he's like, "I'll unturn you into a serpenty thing." And then she gets to go be with her lover, and then at their like rehearsal dinner, somebody outs her as having been a snake, and her fiance dumps her, and she has like this tragic, sad ending.
I am completely fine with that story. He can't date a snake.
Well, she wasn't. She was a lady by then.
She has snake roots.
You just don't like snakes.
Snaky. A little snaky.
So that was sad. But anyway, that's a poem that he wrote, so that's where her name comes from. So, those juvenile literary references.
So I
just
think,
tripping over them.
I think it's so cool. Like, I think he does it in a way that is not like I wouldn't. I mean,
I wouldn't. Know that.
I recognize Lamia, but I was like, or Lamia, whatever it is. But like, it doesn't interfere with the story. It doesn't like beat you over the head with it. If you want to read into it, you can.
Yeah, I totally agree with
Like,
you.
I have seen literary references much more heavy-handed and worse books. So
Yeah.
Lamia, more like lamia.
Well, and they're not like pretending it's something else either.
No.
They're like, we liked this thing and we named these things after this thing.
Yeah,
So
it's like if I had a boat, I would name it SS Wilma because I like Wilma, not because like I want to be pretentious about it. Like you can do things with the things you love, and that's okay.
It's perfectly reasonable to think that, like, if Fanny Brown's name, if that's a name in the English language, that it would have gotten to.
Well,
although
here's
Brown Lamia is a little bit of a
another thing, though,
coincidence.
that it makes it makes me wonder.
Is she supposed to be
she
descended?
part of something?
Yeah, I thought about that too because he said she reminds him of her, and like, yeah, it occurred to me too. Like maybe she's some sort of descendant.
I think it's great.
Or she's a cybrid. She might be a cybrid.
Is she a cybrid?
Maybe. How would you know if no one told you?
What's that test, Kevin? What's that test in Blade Runner?
Void comp.
The void comp. We'd have to do that on her.
I never thought about that.
She might be. I mean, it is
my
awfully
mind is blown,
coincidental.
Lori.
She might be.
My mind is blown.
Okay, so that's our disappointing feminist favorite and fun fact. My misogynist moment
Oh, wait,
is...
hold on. I have a wonderful boob talk.
Oh, go for it.
Okay, so I had 3 bullets. 1, so many. 2, the pale globes of her buttocks. So he says buttocks a lot, and it's such a weird... I just think of Forrest Gump.
Buttocks.
Like, it's such a weird, harsh
Buttocks.
word. It's not sexy, like ass or hiney would be better.
That's
but buttocks-
another...
Heidi would not be better.
Hiney would be better. Than
Scattered,
buttocks?
that's like Scattered Bodies, where he says her buttocks were like 2 eggs, and he gives buttocks a plural verb. Her buttocks were
boobs
like 2 eggs.
2 bags of sand.
And then, so from the Soldier Tale, this is a very sexually explicit one. Well, not very, but it's earmuff your kids if they're listening. He cupped her moving buttocks, pulled her closer, and slid into the moist roughness in front.
moist roughness in front. I remember that one.
Moist roughness, that's a full bush.
In front.
Even if you
In
just
front.
said vagina, would be 10,000 times
Moist
sexier.
roughness in front.
Yeah, not the rear moist roughness.
The moist roughness.
Oh, that's fun. I like it. Look.
So that was my boob talk.
Moist roughness in front is very my dad wrote porno to me.
moist roughness.
I'm very here for that because it indicates a full bush, and I think
does he
full
think of-
bushes need
What
representation.
does he think about vaginas if it's moist roughness and also vagina dentata?
Well, here's the thing. It's not moist on the outside very much. Like
Well, he slid into the moist
it's just two adjectives that don't go well together.
moist
know.
roughness.
I'm okay with it.
Moist roughness reminds me of okra.
Moist. Ochre can be woody and slimy. It's true.
Woo. Okay. Misogynist moments, anyone?
I'll go.
Pick a page.
Okay, my first bullet point. Most of the interactions with women. Second bullet point is referring to a victim of the strike by Martin Salinas, who is surprised by this. He goes, "It was a beautiful girl. Long blonde hair, too soft to be real. A fresh-picked peach, complexion too virginal to dream of touching. A beauty too perfect to believe. Precisely the sort that even the most timid male dreams of violating."
Violating.
Like, even if you're trying to describe an asshole character, you don't have to talk about rape. You don't. There's other ways to say that someone is despicable.
He could have stopped right before
Yeah.
the violating part,
Yeah.
and it would have been fine.
Or even a timid male dreams of making love. Oh no, there's a million different ways he could have said
could
it.
have been would have been fine.
It's just disgusting.
Yep. Yeah, Martin Salinas always has to be like next level gross.
Yep.
And reminder, Martin Salinas might be Dan Simmons. Any more?
We don't want one of
That
his
was
book
mine.
plates.
That was my
No,
same
that
one.
was my primary one.
So
Also, Braun Lamia just being invaded in every possible way by men, just colonized,
by one man. One man has taken over all of her.
and also but also the entirety of like the AI and the Shrike Temple in a way.
And then
Like,
if she is a
What do
cybrid,
they call
was
her?
she just designed for this purpose? Like that's also
what
upsetting.
did I say about her? It's blessed be she, blessed be the mother of our salvation, blessed be the instrument of our atonement, blessed be the bride of our creation, blessed be she. That's
Ugh.
that's the Shrike Church on Braun Lamia.
I don't like the Shrike Church. They sound very evangelical.
And it sounds like there's no women in it. But, I mean, there have to be, I think. I don't know why I think there have to be. It doesn't sound like there are.
Yeah.
So mine, literally every time the consul's great-grandfather thinks about Siri, but most especially her budding breasts, and then to be meta about it, the adult man, Dan Simmons, writing about her budding breasts is a gross misogynist moment, and I want to throw up on it. And then, in a move that is really out of character for her, Lamia and Saul make stew for everybody. And they're like, the two
mothers.
The two mommies. The two mommy characters make the stew for everybody.
I would have thought Het would have made the stew, honestly.
And then another thing that is out of character for her is the consul and Kassad decide to stay up and keep watch, and Lamia says, apropos of nothing, no one asks her. She goes, I'll make coffee for them. Well, she threatens to shoot anybody who's even like,
she doesn't seem particularly domestic.
Snippy. And then she's like, oh, you boys, you're going to get so tired. I'll make coffee for you.
And then apparently it's shitty coffee too.
Because she's not domestic.
Yeah.
But she's got to be the one that does it, because who else is going to do it? A guy?
Maybe Hyperion just like fucks with everyone's personality, makes you opposite
Man,
day.
I just started thinking about the whole Shrike Church and how it's all just completely built on the idea of penetrating someone to death.
Stabby, stab. Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's not unlike the Catholic Church.
Of men. But at least Jesus doesn't go around stabbing people to death.
Well, no, but like I'm thinking of like the horrible priests and like how nuns are relegated to roles of, servitude, that kind of thing. There's not a lot of women
monks, to be fair.
Well, yeah, but like women have never played a huge part in Christianity.
Yeah, I can't.
No, it's a very
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
patriarchal.
can't think of any like major religion here in the West that is like, yeah, women are in charge. Men have to fight for equality.
No, you're absolutely right. Most of them do not penetrate others to death.
That's true.
Correct.
I'm not saying none, because who knows? But
so then I had when the consul's great-grandfather, I know he has a name, I can't remember what it is, and I didn't write it down. When he finds the note and like bomb or whatever that Ciri left in her tomb, and he says to himself, you little bitch, you dear conniving little bitch. And I was just like, he in some kind of way loved her. That's not how you think about people. That's not a thing that you would say. When I'm dead, I don't want anyone saying that. I mean, it just, bitch, two times in one little statement at his wife's funeral. No, thank you. It's not cute. I don't like it.
I mean, I imagine he was trying to be like a little bit bemused, but like it still just doesn't read well on the page.
No, it really doesn't.
And, like, like even if he said like, you goddamn
that's a
asshole.
very aggressive thing to say. I mean, even if he's bemused, he might be going like, "Oh, Ciri, that's so conniving" or something.
Well,
I don't know, but
I'm trying to think of an example of why it's worse because she's a woman. Because if it was his best friend and he said, "You son of a bitch," like that would be like almost like praise.
Yeah,
but saying bitch 3 times is such a like he's chastising her.
Yeah.
Also, like if you said that about your friend or your brother, I still think it's very different than your wife and the mother of your kids.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Like if it were his male partner, his husband had died, and he was like, "You son of a bitch." No, you shouldn't say, a man shouldn't say that to another man that's his partner. Yeah. You shouldn't do that.
I agree.
Shouldn't do it. Alrighty. Oh, I think I've gone over all of my terror parallels. Yeah, I have.
your parallels.
Oh, yeah, but I wanted to call it, since we talk about the terror a lot, I wanted to have like a occasional segment called Terror Talk. But I just sort of sprinkled it through the episode, so I don't think there's any need to make people who are not actually interested in the terror listen to me talk about the terror.
Do y'all know about the terror? What if it turns out we've been employed by Dan Simmons for the entirety of this podcast as a slow burn?
I'm a Dan Simmons cybrid. I've been meaning to tell you guys.
I'm Mr. Blanky. So.
I'd like to be a Captain Crozier cybrid.
Ooh, yeah.
Except I'd be better at sex.
Maybe drink less than he does.
Oh, God, yeah. Mm-hmm.
As a starting point.
Yeah, he's like pickled inside. Okay, so Haley, you did your boob talk. My boob talk was just poor Ciri.
Mirrored nipples.
Oh God, the mirrored nipples. I don't have any fantastical foods. Anybody have fantastical foods? They had stew. They had coffee.
Nothing good.
They had they had like cheesecake and stuff on the tree ship on their way there. They were eating good.
Oh, that's true.
They were eating good. I remember Bron Lamia was eating a chocolate cheesecake, which I also thought was like, on the one hand, anybody can like a chocolate cheesecake, but I also thought it was like straight out of Sex in the City. Like, what would a girl want for dessert?
Cosmos
chocolate cheesecake.
I want an apple-tini and a...
Dan Simmons is like, girl, chicks like cheesecake and chocolate.
I think she wants a salad.
Saul Weintraub made them those delicious sandwiches.
Oh, the sandwiches did sound good. That's kind of like the travel bread. Yeah.
Soap stuff. No need to rehash it, but the whole Keats situation is pure Princess Gina.
Also, Kassad's lady friend is very soapy to me.
Oh,
she just sort of shows up out of nowhere. They have sex, and then she's just sort of a... there's something soapy about that to me.
Appearing to him in dreams only.
Rachel has amnesia. Really.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is very soapy.
Yeah.
It's very
Maybe that's why it's
soapy.
so entertaining.
Maybe.
Did you like the book?
Yeah, I love this book.
Yep, me
I think
too.
It's very good.
I think it has problems and problematics, but yes, I like it. I think it's very good.
I think, the references that I brought up throughout the episode, like this is, whether it was on purpose or not for its, the things that it has influenced a lot, I think. So,
yeah. It's just like building literary references on top of literary references.
How juvenile.
It's ruining English language literature.
truly.
Star Wars or Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings.
For sure.
Yeah, this book specifically is Lord of the Rings.
They're riding around on an ent.
There's a journey. There's a team. I feel like Martin Salinas would be a hobbit.
He has too much sex to be a hobbit.
Well, hobbits get
Yeah, I mean,
you know?
maybe it's just off camera. Baby hobbits come from somewhere.
That's true.
The Shrike reminds me of an orc, kinda, and there's a ship on a sea of grass, because there's a ship in Lord of the Rings, isn't there?
Ooh, I hope Cassad doesn't turn out to be a bad guy, because he could be like an Aragorn kind of character.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to hear more about. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I wanted to hear more about your Atlanta.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so this is a stretch, mainly, and I was just inspired by the Farcaster being a Marta stop. All right. The technocore, because I did research into like all these terms that I think are kind of confusing. Technocore is, this AI intelligence that lives apart from humanity, which I kind of like, because I never have a fear of robots becoming evil. I don't. I think that if they do become sentient, they're not going to care about hurting us. So imagine the technocore as if like robots just worked downtown in Atlanta and did their own thing. Like they've got 2 buildings. They don't bother us, but like they're weird. I don't know. Farcaster's Marta stop for galactic travel. The all thing is like if the Atlanta subreddit or your neighborhood Facebook group was just in your head. But you can also vote on it. It's weird. Shrike is Atlanta Man, who is this guy that walks around
Yes.
in that weird suit down Boulevard.
Oh, the Iron Man type suit that he's
yeah.
made? Yeah.
The World Web is Georgia, which is and there's a collection of counties, and Atlanta would be like a county. The Fat Line is basically 4G, and Ousters live OTP.
Perfect.
That's just for our Atlanta listeners.
So, coming up next time, we will be talking about The City and the City by China Mieville. Wait, I looked up how to say it and I practiced. China Mieville. Mieville? Mieville? I made my own
I always say
pronunciation
Mieville,
guide and
but I
I
don't know
don't.
why.
Because there's an accent grave on the E.
Mieville.
Accent, or China Mieville, that's what I say.
Yeah.
Although technically in French it might be Mieville.
I think, well,
He's not French, is he?
No,
I don't think so.
his name is China.
Mieville. That's what they said. I listened to him receiving the Arthur C. Clarke Award, and I hoped that the presenter got it right. But as we all
As we've
know,
seen.
award presenters sometimes don't give a shit about saying things correctly. But yeah, I think it's Mieville. 2010 winner for best novel, and it tied with my favorite book, The Wind-Up Girl.
Oh, I didn't know that it tied for.
Oh, yeah, I remember that
Wow.
when we read Wind Up Girl.
So it tied, and they couldn't just be like, China wins. Like, come on.
Yeah, there should be if there's a tie, we pick the book with the least sexual violence and give that one the award.
And I think that's fine.
Yeah, so that's the one that's coming up next.
Oh, I just remembered one of my boob talk ones.
Oh, go for it.
I forgot. It's when Cassad first sees Minetta, and she's basically wearing a sack. But he's like, you could still see the roundness of her breast and buttocks underneath it. For some reason, that really struck me. He's like, no,
All
you
the
can't.
way through the
you
bag.
can't, Cassad. Anyway, sorry, I just thought of that.
All right, that's it. Bye.
Bye.
I mean, if he had said Siri's breasts instead of her budding breasts, I would have talked for 15 fewer minutes in this episode.
No, it's true.
But he just wants you to know that they're not done growing.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate it. I hate it. I hate it.